Who can make you happy?
Hey, the Chrysler Man! The Chrysler Man!
The Avengers are 5-seater family cars. And as for performance, Avenger driving is believing. So who can make you happy when you buy a car?
The Chrysler Man! Chrysler Man! The Chrysler Man can!
Oh, that's great. And funny to hear it mentioning the Chrysler 2-litre. That's a model I'd almost forgotten about.
Well, it wasn't exactly a big seller, was it?
No, true enough. But, of course, Chrysler did have success with their later cars of the 70s, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
Yeah, I remember when the Alpine arrived, that would be, 75? That
Yeah.
was a fine-looking car.
It was.
And, of course, being a 5-door hatchback, that was very well timed for the way the market was changing.
It was perfect. And interestingly, it was a proper joint effort, the Alpine. It was styled in the UK by Roy Axe.
Roy Axe.
Yeah, he designed the old Avenger, of course. But it was engineered in France by Simca. And it did well, too. The Alpine, it won European Car of the Year award in 1976.
And Chrysler also launched the small Horizon, wasn't it?
They did, yeah.
That was, 78,
78,
I think?
yeah.
And that gave Chrysler, it was a head-on rival to the Golf. Didn't that win Car of the Year as well?
The Horizon, yeah, it did, funnily enough. And it sold pretty well throughout Europe. I mean, let's not forget that also, as well as, although it was designed very much as a European car, that the Horizon, it also had a successful career in the US. Chrysler, understandably, thought it would be a good idea to adapt it for an American audience and to sell the Horizon there as a subcompact model.
Yeah, well, I think they've got a bit of history, haven't they? Because they did a similar thing with the Avenger,
That's
and
right.
they rebadged that Plymouth Cricket, wasn't it,
yeah.
for the American market? Although I don't think it was a very big success.
No, it wasn't. To be honest, the Cricket, it was very short-lived, but there was growing demand for subcompacts in the 70s. So, launching the more modern Horizon over in the US, it was a logical move. Although I'm not sure that the fake wood side panels that were an optional extra, I'm not sure they were a great idea.
You're kidding! I didn't know about that. What, Horizon fake woody. Oh, they're so bad. It's genius.
Absolutely.
Anyway, one thing that actually I know, other than you, rather, about the American Horizon.
Oh, go on then.
It was quite a big hit,
It was.
and there were about 2.5 million built.
As many as that,
in
really?
total.
Yeah.
I think so. Let's have a listen. I've got a great ad for the Horizon and the Omni here.
Brilliant.
Two small cars show the world how America competes. Dodge Omni America, Plymouth Horizon America. Chrysler loaded them with equipment and cut the sticker price. At $59.95, they're the best value of any small car from America. They're so successful, America buys almost one a minute. And you get Chrysler's 770 protection plan. Yes, America can compete. And Chrysler's building cars that prove it.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, the Horizon, Richard, did well on both sides of the Atlantic, you're right. We should point out, though, that although the European and the American Horizons, they looked similar, in reality, virtually nothing was actually interchangeable.
A bit like the
between them.
Escort.
Exactly, yeah. But anyway, I digress, because predating the Horizon here in Europe was a particular favourite of mine. Rich, do you remember the good old Chrysler Sunbeam that arrived in 1977? It was a modern-looking small hatch, Chrysler's new contender in the Super Mini class. But unlike rivals like the Ford Fiesta and the Renault 5, it was rear-wheel drive.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, neat little car, the Sunbeam.
Yeah.
Something of a rally legend once Lotus got their hands on it. I mean, that Lotus Sunbeam, that was a good-looking car, absolute flyer.
Oh, wasn't it?
Back in the day. Of course, they're worth serious money, of course. And Mark Thatcher, our late Prime Minister's son, I think he was driving one when he went missing, I seem to recall.
Okay, well, we won't go there, Rich. But even the regular Sunbeams, I reckon they were decent little cars. I mean, it had to be rear-wheel drive, of course, because it was based around the existing Avenger platform, albeit shortened by about 3 inches, I think. That certainly helped to speed up the development process. Can you believe they went from the drawing board to the showroom in just over 18 months?
Wow.
I mean, that's an incredibly short time for any
Amazing.
car.
Yeah.
But the pressure was on because the British government of the time had given Chrysler a grant towards development of the Sunbeam on the proviso that it kept the Linwood factory open. That's the the one in Scotland that was originally built the Hillman Imp.
Yeah, well, I certainly remember the launch of the Sunbeam back in '77. Those TV ads with none other than Petula Clark singing about how wonderful the little Chrysler was. Yeah. Dear Petula.
Oh, another friend of yours?
Oh, the tales I could tell.
Oh, here we go.
Well, actually, no, I've never met her. But that advert of hers, that was great. We've got a copy here. Let's have a listen.
Okay.
Put a Chrysler Sunbeam in your life, it'll put a smile on your face. It's the car that gives you the glow that will show when you go any place. You know when you turn the key, this is how it's meant to be. Feel with every mile, Sunbeam special style when you go for a ride in the town or countryside. There is so much room to spare with Sunbeam special flair.
The new Chrysler Sunbeam. I like it. Think you will too.
Put a Chrysler Sunbeam in your life. Put a Chrysler Sunbeam in your life.
Hey, nice key change at the end there, Petula.
Absolutely. I wonder if Chrysler gave her a free car.
You never know.
Anyway, Paul, as interesting as this is, reminiscing about Chrysler Europe in the 70s, what's it got to do with today's Fiat Chrysler setup?
Well, here's the thing, Rich, because Chrysler Europe, well, it wasn't the huge success that the American parent company hoped for. As the 70s went on, the European business, it was losing money, it was losing market share. Chrysler eventually decided they wanted out. And that's why in 1978, the entire loss-making Chrysler Europe setup was sold for a nominal $1 to none other than PSA of France.
The very same company that's about to merge with Fiat Chrysler Automobiles in 2020.
Absolutely.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Nicely done, Rich. But yeah, it's a strange situation. Anyway, that takeover of 1978, it marked the beginning of the end for Chrysler Europe, as by August of the following year, the entire Chrysler lineup in the UK, it was being rebranded as Talbot. And even that was short-lived. The very last Talbot passenger car, that was built in 1987, and from then on, PSA would be focusing entirely on its Peugeot and Citroën brands, of course.
Yeah, and here we are, more than 40 years on from PSA buying Chrysler Europe, and they're about to take on the entire Fiat Chrysler group.
They are. Yeah.
We live in interesting times, Paul. Anyway, time for a quick break.
Hello, I'm James Hunt, and I'd like to show you a really great car. This Vauxhall Viva. It's comfortable, it's economical, it handles well, and like all today's Vauxhalls, it's built to last. In fact, I believe the Vauxhall have done a lot in the last couple of years to make their cars even better. But don't take my word for it. Take a test drive at your Vauxhall dealer now. Tell him James Hunt sent you.
Welcome back. And as well as Paul and me, let me introduce behind the glass, we have the Team Supreme. That's Tom, our producer, assisted by Mr. T. Now, some people have been doubting that Mr. T actually exists. So say hi, T.
There's not a problem I can't fix, because I can do it in the mix.
Oh, and to think, he almost looks normal. OK, moving quickly along. In last week's news section, we promised to revisit the electric cars and the resto mods debate. And with us today, we have classic car historian and consultant Steven Keen. Hello, Steven.
Richard, hello, how are you doing?
Now, I met Steven through Silverstone Auctions, and I was immediately impressed, not only by his knowledge, but also by his enthusiasm and personality. Mind you, personality isn't something I get exposed to much working with Paul.
Oh, yeah, I heard that.
So, Stephen, it seems as if not a week goes by when we don't hear a scare story about the end of classic cars, or cars in total, running out of fuel, being banned, and so on. And some of the Facebook classic car groups are in meltdown right now. What's your take on all that?
Well, that's right, Richard. There is a bit of negativity around with regards to classic cars and their future and what have you. But I disagree completely. I think we're in the golden era of classic car ownership. It's never been easier to own a classic car. Parts are readily available. We've got the internet full of knowledge. open to everyone. And if you're interested in potentially buying a classic car, you only have to hop on, get onto some forums, get onto some web pages. You can find out everything you need to know, and make an informed choice when you're purchasing.
And of course, as we've heard this week, the ban on selling new petrol, diesel, or hybrid cars in the UK, that's been brought forward from 2040 to 2035 under the latest government plans. Craigie, Rich, you'll be about 90 then, won't you? The ban is also being expanded to hybrid cars and plug-in hybrids, which weren't included under the original proposals.
Yeah, I can't help but be sceptical, Paul. I mean, right now there are 10,000 odd places in the UK where you can charge an electric vehicle, and yet it's estimated that the UK needs 25 million charging points for electric vehicles.
Yeah.
So if we're switching to electric cars, the speed of getting those charging points in will have to radically increase to cope with the demand.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I was reading the other day, I think 1.5% or 1.5% roughly of new car sales are fully electric. It's going to be a massive expansion for this to work. It's almost as if people conveniently forget what the switch means to the actual infrastructure, isn't it?
Yeah, true enough. Anyway, harking back to what Steven said, I have to say, I've changed my personal opinion of resto mods and so on quite considerably over the years. I mean, when I was a young man, I was a bit of a purist, but now I feel that anything that helps people get out and drive their classic, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So power steering, if it helps people when they get a bit older, great.
You're talking from experience.
Not quite there yet, dear boy. It's far better than having to sell the car. And
of course it is.
If a modern engine or a better gearbox or better brakes, particularly, if that helps you use the car day to day in modern traffic instead of letting it slowly die in a shed, if that's the alternative, then great, I'm all for it.
Absolutely.
Get your classics out there, drive them, enjoy them, share them, let other people see them too. Now, Stephen, before we let you go, let me ask you, of all the cars you've owned, which do you miss the most?
Miss the most? I had an E36 318IS, and it was my first real BMW, as it were. I had a few kind of scrappy ones before that, but it was a lovely car, one owner, low mileage, and I did about 130,000 miles in that car over the years. It was black. It was known as Blackie to me, and I think that's the car probably I have the most memories in and kind of miss the most, really.
Now, you see a dazzling array of cars in your work at Silverstone Auctions, but if you could buy any classic, price no object, which one would be in your driveway next week?
Well, when you say in my driveway, it makes me think it has to be a driver. It has to be a car that you can just hop in and drive the door handles off, a real classic to be enjoyed. If you'd have said in your lockup, that would be different. That's a kind of collector's piece to put to one side. And so as a kind of driver, if you kind of hop on the Eagle E-Type website, for example, there's a Series 1 3.8 fixed-head coupe on there, one of the early batch cars, sensibly modified and upgraded for modern use. That's the car I'd have on my driveway. I don't think you can get a better car to just hop in and drive the hell out of. Really enjoy.
And have you got a biggest regret, the one that got away?
The one that got away for me was an E30 M3 that I owned. It's a Johnny Cicotto edition. When I was growing up in the 80s, I grew up in the golden era of the touring cars, I believe. And Johnny Cicotto was one of my heroes. He was a Yamaha factory rider. I've always been a motorcycle guy myself as well. And when the opportunity came to buy one, I got one, and sadly had to sell it to fund a house move not so long ago. So that's the one that got away from me.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Stephen.
Always a pleasure. Good to talk to you, Richard.
Oh, we're the men of Texaco. We work from Maine to Mexico. There's nothing like this Texaco of ours. Our show tonight is powerful. We'll wow you with an hour full of howls from a shower full of stars. We're the merry Texaco men. Tonight we may be showmen. Tomorrow we'll be servicing your cars. I wipe the pipe, I pump the gas, I rub the hub, I scrub the glass. I touch the clutch, I mop the top, I poke the choke, I sell the pop. I clear the gear, I block the knock, I jack the back, I set the clock. So join the ranks of those who know and fill your tank with Texaco.